And yeah, maybe that's going to cause the dissolution of my marriage. And yeah, maybe that's going to traumatize my children. And yeah, maybe that's going to cause...
How would that traumatize her kids? She literally said in the previous sentence that I'm going to focus more on my kids.
How can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Playmore69, aka Michael here, and this is the All in All Podcast, episode 20. And in this episode today, I will be doing a little bit of a special episode where I will be reacting to the Daily Wire. And I won't just be reacting to one video, I'll be reacting to a playlist of them. And if you want to watch the original videos, the playlist that I will be reacting to will be down in the description below. I obviously just custom made it for some brain rot Daily Wire videos, and I really decided to obviously do this because this is episode 20 of the podcast. This is the 4-month anniversary. I did something special for episode 10, which was my first video podcast. So basically my goal for this podcast is try to make it like a, 2-hour special or something like that, because I've actually looked at my podcasts, and all of the podcasts that have just been me, which are solo podcasts, they haven't even ever gone over an hour. And I've had this podcast now for 4 months. This is the 4th month now. And, my original goal in my first episode was to make this an hour-long show. So in this episode today, it's probably going to be much longer. I have a lot of videos to react to, and I think it's Michael Knowles starts first, Ben Shapiro, and then we finish off with Matt Walsh. And also, I will be playing some World at War custom zombies in the background, just because I don't know if I could literally sit through 2 hours of Daily Wire videos. But anyways, let's get straight into it. The first video is Michael Knowles, and I believe this video to be 40% of Gen Z is gay according to new polls. So let's get into it.
There's a study, just came out of Barna study. Well, I guess it came out a little while ago, but it's making the rounds again because of these new laws. 30% of millennials identify as LGBTQ, whatever the rest of the letters are. 40% of Zoomers, the younger generation, identify as LGBTQ, whatever the rest of the letters are. When you just look at the general population, identification with LGBTQ, LMNOP, is 6%. So how did we go, and it's much lower among certain age groups. So how did we go from 6% to 40%? What the left used to tell you is, look, you're just born this way. You're born this way, you can never change your sexual desire.
All right, so I guess starting out for this video, I wish he would say why this is a problem. He's kind of just saying that, people were not that gay like from the previous generations, but now all of a sudden that's a problem. So I wonder if he's actually going to explore that, or just use this kind of language saying that, oh, well, 40%, how could it go from 6 to 40%? Like, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Desires or orientation or then later gender, right? You can't change it. Now it's a little different, because they're saying not only can you change your sexual desires, you can change your whole sex. If you're a man, you can become a woman. But so it's a little bit confused. But the one thing we were told is that none of this has anything to do with culture. None of this has anything to do with nurture. None of this has anything to do with education. You can't change who we are. It's just who we are is just deep, deep, deep down.
I mean, isn't that true in a way? Is that, culture could have an influence on you, but normally, like, that's something you're born with, and also, like, if you don't want to look at humans, you can look at other animals. Other animals engage in this behavior as well. So it's not something that's exclusive to humans. Yeah, culture could have an influence on it, but why is this such a problem? It seems like he's just fear-mongering at this point.
So my question then is, how did we go from 6% to 40%? Either Alex Jones is right and there's just something in the water, And they're not only turning the frickin' frogs gay, but they're turning everyone else gay too. It's either that, actually he was right about the frogs, so I don't know. All right, I'll withhold judgment. Or what I think is probably more likely, culture obviously matters. And culture shapes the way and education, most importantly, shapes the way we view the world, shapes the way we view ourselves. It even helps to shape our desires, right? Little kids desire to just eat cookies all the time and have no self-control. And then through education, as they grow and mature, their tastes change, their desires change, and their discipline changes as well. Or at least it used to. Now we...
So is being gay a desire you should not have? Like, is this a conservative take? Is that being gay is a desire that you should either grow out of or just not have altogether?
Put education completely in the opposite direction, to not to cultivate the higher things in the rational will, but to cultivate all sorts of crazy, beyond sex, just to cultivate all sorts of crazy sorts of desires. If that is the case, that the culture and the education shapes it, then obviously we've got to have a say in education. Then obviously, if education could convince half a generation of...
Of course, you want control over education so you can teach kids not to be gay. I'm guessing you want conversion therapy as well.
Of Americans, that they're not the sex that they say that they are. They're not the sex that they actually are, and they're a completely different sex, or their sexual desires are all kind of kooky. If it can do that, then it can go in the other direction too, can it?
Why does it have to, though? Why does it have to go into the other direction? I'm not understanding that. It's like he's saying that, like, oh, the generations are more gay now, and somehow this is a problem, and somehow we need to fix this to go to the other direction. Why? Why do we need to do that?
Actually, not even all that surprised by these very high numbers, 30, 40%. What this tells me is that young people are right now, as they always are, searching for meaning. They're searching for truth. They're very confused.
Yes, because being gay is somehow searching for truth, and being straight is knowing the truth.
They don't have all the answers, and they're just trying to grab onto the things that are deeper. Not merely the physical things of this world, but what's it all about? What are we here for? What am I? You know, all the questions the young people ask. And they used to have those questions answered by true religion and by true philosophy and by sophisticated, serious thinking. And now they're having those questions answered by radical leftist ideologues who are extremely shallow in their thought and who are leading them down a very bad path.
Yes, because of course true philosophy and true religion are 100% right, and they say, do not be gay, only be straight, and then you will somehow know the meaning of the world.
And telling them, actually, all you are is your appetites. All you are is either your flesh or not your flesh. They're not getting very good answers there. And young people have a right to the truth, and we ought to present it to them in schools. Glad you liked that clip. Ring the bell, please. Ring the bell, subscribe, get notifications, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you get your audio podcast. Subscribe there to The Michael Knowles Show. Leave a 5-star review. I just put up 10, leave 2 5-star reviews if you can. I don't know. I don't really know how it works. Subscribe. We will see you next time.
Jesus.
I have not talked about this story too much because it's sort of tabloid trash, and the dissolution of a celebrity marriage is neither particularly notable news nor really any of my business or interest. But I'll tell you,
This one is Kim Kardashian. I've chosen myself. Oh, this one is... I watched like the first 20 seconds of this one. This one's pretty good.
I was really hoping those 2 kids would make it. I know it's weird because, Kim Kardashian is a reality TV porn star, right? She got her start on this porn tape. And Kanye West is one of the most eccentric rappers and individuals in the entire world. But I kind of thought, I was hoping they would make it. Yeah, and Kanye West, he had this conversion experience. He became quite serious, ostensibly, about his Christianity, and I thought it'd be really good if they could make it. But Kim Kardashian has said she's chosen herself. There's a 7 bazillion word profile of her now in one of the magazines. What is it, Vogue, I guess?
Good for her.
And in it, she says, I've chosen myself. Quote,
Awesome.
For so long, I did what made other people happy, the 41-year-old explains. And I think in the last 2 years, I decided I'm going to make myself happy. And that feels really good. And even if that created changes and caused my divorce, I think it's important to be honest with yourself about what really makes you happy. I've chosen myself. I think it's okay to choose you. She pauses before elaborating. My 40s are about being team me. I'm going to eat well, I'm going to work out, I'm going to have more fun, spend more time with my kids.
Good goals to have.
Happy. I'm going to put my phone down. It's about me. And maybe that's going to cause the dissolution of my marriage. And yeah, maybe that's going to traumatize my children. And yeah, maybe that's going to cause...
How would that traumatize her kids? She literally said in the previous sentence that I'm going to focus more on my kids. Like, if anything, the kids are honestly much better just being away from Kanye West, and somehow this is selfish of her saying that she wants to choose herself and just focus on herself and not do what quote unquote society says, and somehow that's bad.
Just horrible problems for everyone whom I ostensibly love. But I just kind of wanna, and that's really good and important, right? Be selfish. It's really good to be selfish.
It is.
So says the moral philosopher Kim Kardashian. She has no right to do this. This is horribly reckless.
No right.
This is terrible for her children. It's wrong to do this in her marriage. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. Everything about it is wrong.
Women to divorce.
And I bring it up not just
own.
to shame Kim Kardashian, but because so many people believe this in our culture. They just think, I've got it. I'm so put upon. I do so much for everybody else. What are you talking about, lady? You are a celebrity, a reality TV star celebrity. Your entire career is about being self-obsessed. And so you've been self-obsessed for your whole life, and now you're being more self-obsessed, and you're pretending that that's a change, which it's not. And you're pretending it's a change for the better, which it wouldn't be even if it were true. You're just doing more of what you've been doing the whole time, and it's leading you to ever more destructive behaviors. So this is a great way to live a miserable life. I'm very sad that Kim Ye seems to be...
Okay, so it's somehow more depressing to live a life of focusing on yourself, focusing on what you like, focusing on what makes you happy, and somehow that is a miserable life according to Michael Knowles. I honestly don't understand that. Because she truly was not happy with what she was doing, and now she's focusing more on herself. I think that will make her happy, right? So honestly, I don't get that connection here. I think it's literally just because she's a woman and she's divorcing, and Michael Knowles' conservatism cannot rack his brain about that.
Splitting up. But let this be a cautionary tale. In the year of our Lord, 2022, why are you going to the brick and mortar auto parts store?
Lord, I'm
why
not
are you
that.
taking the time?
Big news.
Okay.
There's a woman right now. She was from the AT&T commercials. I haven't seen a lot of them, but she's the lady from the AT&T commercials, Milana Vaintrub. She just wrote this long essay about how happy she is to have aborted her child. She said, over the past decade, I've hardly thought about my abortion except for when I think of those who may not have access to one. She's saying, I'm not upset about my abortion. I don't even think about it. That's why I'm writing long essays about it. It's because I totally don't think about it, and it had no effect, and it was totally a trivial event. She goes, now that I've experienced a full-term pregnancy and given birth, I find myself thinking about how imprisoning it would be to go through this if I didn't choose it.
It would be.
Spoiler alert, by the way, 99% plus of women who get abortions choose it. They choose to get pregnant because they've had consensual sex. All of us with a uterus may soon be stripped of the constitutional right to an abortion. It's awful. Here we are. I wouldn't have had my career. I wouldn't have had all of this if I hadn't killed my child. I couldn't have sold cell phones on television. I couldn't have had the supreme joy of selling cellular telephone plans on TV if I had not killed my child. It's a horrific thing. I assume this is a completely fake front, and she actually is deeply troubled by this, which is why she keeps talking about it. But think...
Okay, so if she's trying to further her career and focus on that, and obviously she didn't want to have a kid at that time, then it would make sense for her to have an abortion, right? So I really don't get that argument. Is like, if a woman gets pregnant, like every single goal and dream she has needs to be just put aside and have a kid immediately, no matter the circumstances.
Think about what madness a culture has to descend into and a person has to descend into to think that selling crappy cell phones on television is so much better than having a child. And
it is to some people
That's
subjective,
the
right?
mad sort of culture we're living in, and we've all got to pretend that it's true in this gaslighting culture. I'm glad you like that clip. Ring the bell.
Okay, wait. So Michael Knowles does not think it is a subjective feeling for someone to actually have a kid and actually want to have a kid. I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to, right? Is that if they want to have a kid, and I'm assuming that, probably the majority of women that get pregnant probably do want to have a kid. But for those who are not interested in having the kid, and obviously he, downplays her, role on TV, which, she's a commercial actress at the end of the day, but still, she's living, whatever life she wants to live, and she doesn't want to have a kid, and somehow that is just a huge problem for Michael Knowles because she wants to focus on other things. So, all right, the next one. Oh, this one's
Hello,
good.
darlings.
So, Reddit relationship advice for liberals. Michael Knowles, aka this relationship advice should be for me, so let's hear it.
Happy Valentine's Day. It is I, Michael Knowles, the Daily Wire's love guru. The producers have been perusing Reddit, the deep bowels of the internet, for the myriad romantic dilemmas that people are facing today so that I can pontificate and give you my expert advice.
They call him the love guru.
We have 5 files here, 5 very difficult, thorny romantic cases. We will be going through them one by one. Without further ado, let's get started on case number 1. She canceled our date because of my zodiac sign.
Oh, Lord.
Actually, on second thought, here's the advice, according to the people of Reddit. Astrology is just racism for women. True. She's obviously Cancer. Oh, come on. That's pretty funny. That's such a Virgo thing to do. You're telling me. Well, I mean, you are an Aries. All right, let's see this guy's full issue. I'm a bit thrown off by this, but I was canceled on due to my zodiac sign. Throughout the week before work, I visit a coffee shop. I go practically every weekday, and I've been seeing the same barista there every morning. We seemed to click well with our small conversations, and after chatting with her for a few weeks, I decided to offer my number since she was on the clock. She declined to take my number, but gave me her Snapchat. Okay. We chatted a bit on Snapchat and agreed to go on a date Friday. About an hour after that, she said she wouldn't be able to go out with me because she saw on my Snap profile that I was an Aries. She said she doesn't date Aries, but it was nice meeting me. Is this something that is common in the dating world? I've never been rejected over my zodiac sign before, so it kind of surprised me. Okay, I have a few different layers of advice here. First of all, if a woman is making these big sorts of decisions, potentially life-changing decisions, based on astrology, run. True. Not merely because she's very probably an idiot, but also because she might.
Yeah, I mean, I have this exact same take here. If someone is that obsessed with astrology signs, then it's probably a good idea not to date them. I mean, maybe be friends. That would be like your kind of obligatory crazy friend, but I would never date someone that would be that into astrology signs because that is a big red flag. And I don't think that's a specific like liberal thing. I mean, maybe it's like a trope that a lot of people associate with that, but like maybe it's like a far left individual. I don't know. It didn't even set it, and it didn't even really say it in the post. But I mean, yeah, I would definitely run from this person.
Be a witch.
We have found the witch. May we burn her?
See, the issue with astrology in the Bible, when they say don't, consult astrologers and things, is not because astrologers are charlatans, although very often they are charlatans, but also because astrology is obviously real and can compromise your free will. So don't do that, So sometimes it's real. And so you don't want to do that. That's a very, very bad thing. She sounds a little bit kooky, so probably that would give you a pretty terrible life. And then I'd say the deepest layer of advice here is it might just be an excuse because she doesn't like you that much after you chatted. So I hate to give you the really hard advice here, but it's probably just an excuse. Like, oh no, I'm busy. I've got to study for an exam. Oh yeah, my grandma died. Oh, my other grandma died. Oh, my third grandma died. You say, huh?
It's not you, it's me.
I don't think that works. So it's okay, buddy. There's more fish in the sea. Number 2. Pretty sure this girl I'm seeing has an OnlyFans. How do I find the evidence? You go to onlyfans.com. Is that easy? The first response is, don't push your misogynistic white male BS on her. If you can't handle it, leave. No need to try to prevent her from living her best life. Yeah, if you don't love me when I'm a prostitute, you can't have me when I remain a prostitute because I refuse to give it up for a better life. No, that's not great advice. Tiny Hands 25 says, I guess it just really depends on how hot she is. A kid is already tough, but maybe she's enough of a smoke show to get over that. And an OnlyFans, I guess maybe she has a child too, and she could be making bank. So that advice is, not only do you need to respect the OnlyFans thing, but hey, you can also make some money on it. Cha-ching, cha-ching. You can be a pimp. You can be what you've always wanted to be, a pimp. Okay, what's the full problem here, my friend? Let's not get into the ins and outs of why I think this girl has an OnlyFans. All right, calm down here with the graphic descriptions. She has kids and she financially carries them, and her legit, universally unattractive female friend who babysits for her. She does side hustles, some that I know about, and she doesn't live like a super boss high roller, but to me there's no way her life adds up. She says she doesn't get help from baby daddies or family. She seemed from the start to have suspiciously really good game at sending me captioned spicy photos over the phone that I didn't request or instigate. There are a few other reasons, but I will not get into them since they are a bit more personal in nature. I'm 90% sure she has this going on. She claims that she's not doing it and has never done anything like that. I don't believe her. The bottom line is, my position is, as a man with resources, I'm doing what I'm doing anyway because I have to do my due diligence. It's not a choice. It's really more about moral due diligence. I can't seriously be with a person who would do something like that and lie about it to me if she wants to involve me in her life. She already has strikes against her, and it's amazing I'm still seeing her knowing she already has kids and everything. I'm starting to like the girl a lot.
Okay, OnlyFans girl. If the guy is still seeing her, then obviously, if he has objections to her having an OnlyFans, obviously she must be pretty hot. That's really what it comes down to. I don't think that she wouldn't be that hot. I mean, plus she has a kid at the same time. And if it's that much of an issue, she has an OnlyFans, then at this point, I think he would be okay with it because, he's good with the fact that he doesn't know yet, but he's still seeing her anyways, even though he has all these suspicions, which is quite odd. So, I mean, at least my take on this is like, yeah, I mean, you could obviously like reverse image search her face and probably come up with it on the internet before. I mean, you might be able to find the OnlyFans that way. But yeah, honestly, the more like this post is read, the more I think that this guy who created the post does not really care if this girl has an OnlyFans because, he's suspicious, she has a kid, she's doing side hustles, and, apparently she's really good at captioning photos, but he's still seeing her at the end of the day, so obviously it doesn't matter too much.
A lot more than I like you. I think you might be the baddie here, guy, if this is your attitude. How do I find out that she has an OnlyFans? How do I discover it? We've already had conversations where she knows a surprising amount of information about how that works for girls. She knows about geo-blocking. How do I find the evidence? I think I can handle it if I just 100% have the evidence. You sound like a freaking psycho. This woman should run from you as fast as she possibly can.
True.
There should be
Actual good
this
advice.
woman-shaped hole in the door. She runs so fast out of the room because you're pursuing her. How charitable that you would even entertain the possibility of having a relationship with her, even though she's already got all those strikes against her. You know, like kids. She didn't even make the responsible choice and kill her child when she got knocked up. Gosh, you're like Mother Teresa, aren't you, buddy? Good grief. I don't know, maybe she has an OnlyFans, maybe not. You can't trust her. That's more a you problem than a her problem. You're like calling in the NSA and the FBI to figure out the details of this woman's past life. Go seek help. Go get a, you don't need a girlfriend, you need a therapist. Go find a therapist. All right, next question, number 3. I saw my friend's fiance on a dating app. I haven't talked to him in a few years. Should I say something to him? Oh, the current fiance, yikes. This is the answers from people on Reddit. Why assume that the fiance is cheating on him, rather? They could be open or polyamorous, and telling him would just shame their fun and open lifestyle.
Exactly.
Just mind your business and don't force your radical and close-minded opinion on him that marriage has a meaning. You know, your radical, insane opinion that you shouldn't just be a hedonistic...
Okay, so obviously I guarantee Michael Knowles does not agree with polyamory, which is having multiple relationships outside of the marriage or just a single relationship. So, I mean, I honestly would take the stance of it's not my business, so I wouldn't obviously get in the middle of it, because you're really just creating a problem for yourself down the road that, you know, you don't need. But, I mean, at least my opinion on that would be, you know, if they are polyamorous, that's great. If they aren't, then it's really none of my business. And, like, unless you're, like, very close friends with them and, like, had 100% evidence, like, they were cheating, or this one of the people in the relationship was cheating and the other person didn't know, well, then obviously, okay, you could say something at that point. But, you know, at least from what the post has said so far, I would say just, you know, mind your own business. It doesn't really matter. And, you know, again, for the whole, like, marriage thing, obviously conservatives have a different view on marriage. It has different meanings to different people. Some people don't look at it as this, like, sacred thing like Michael Knowles does, or, you know, most conservatives do. But yeah, it has, you know, a different meaning to different people.
Sexual degenerate, you know, that crazy view. Next one. I want to read the name for this second respondent. Tillicum was framed. That was the SeaWorld killer whale that killed that lady. Great name. Send him an anonymous email. Fair enough. Champagner boy. The correct thing is to match her and, I'm not going to read that word, but it's naughty. And no, you should not do that to her. None of your business. Your friend will never believe you. Been there, done that. That might be true as well. All right, let's get the whole story. Hi all. I was swiping through Bumble last night and I was surprised to see my friend's fiance pop up on my screen. She was verified through the app, so I don't think it was a bot. Her post didn't mention anything about her being in an open relationship or anything like that.
That's
I just
kind of a
remember
red
my
flag.
friend posting something on social media about her like a week ago, about how lucky he is to have her and how much she means to him. So it kind of threw me for a loop. I checked and the post is still there and his profile pic is of him and her. His relationship status says they are engaged. They also have a young child together. Oh my gosh. The thing is that I'm not close with him anymore. We went to high school together and then worked for a few years together at the same job. We got along pretty well and hung out outside of work, but stopped talking over time. I checked my messages, and the last time I talked to him directly was over 2 years ago. We'll interact on each other's social media posts every once in a while, but that's about it. My question is, should I bring this to his attention? I feel some obligation since we used to be friends, but at the same time, we haven't talked in a while, so maybe it's not my place. What is the correct thing to do here? The thing is, I don't know how dating apps work, because I got back together with my now wife, like right as dating apps were coming out.
You've got mail.
So it was, I missed it. So I don't, and the reason I mention this is is it possible that this chick is just still is on the dating apps, but she's not actively using it? So what did she sign up?
Wow. I actually wasn't expecting this from Michael Knowles. He's actually giving the woman the benefit of the doubt, which, is quite odd for conservatives, but that's actually quite crazy. But yeah, I mean, at least from what the post is saying, over 2 years that she hasn't talked to this guy, so why bring it to his attention? I mean, that's a really good point. If I haven't talked to someone in over 2 years and then I interact with, or I see, on a dating app that someone that they're with, are in a relationship and they're on this dating app, it could be, it's one of those things that, it could be up to judgment. How long were you friends with this person, and, how close were you? If you were just acquaintances, at the end of the day, it's probably not your place to say anything. And, honestly, at least today, if this is a young couple, I would legitimately believe that they were in an open relationship. Kind of odd that it wasn't on like a dating profile, because at least in like my experience, like if people are in open relationships, that's usually like said on the profile. But yeah, I mean, it could just be an old account. It really could. I don't know if like Bumble like deletes old accounts, like if you haven't logged in them for a while. Could be the case, but not 100% sure on that. At least if I was in this situation, I probably wouldn't do anything, because it's just creating a problem that I don't have currently, and I really wouldn't want to engage in that. Almost died there.
Up for it 6 months ago, and so people are still seeing her, and but she's not really actively doing it. I don't know. If you could figure that out, that would be helpful, because if she is still prowling about, even though she's allegedly engaged to this guy, I would tell him. I know the impulse here is don't get involved, it's easier to just ignore it, but if this person is in any way still your friend, I do think you probably owe it to him to just, you don't need to make any accusations. You don't need to really involve yourself and swipe her, and then go on a date and be like, hey lady, stop screwing around on my friend. But you could just maybe shoot him a note or a text or whatever and say, hey bro, this is going to seem kind of weird. I don't want to butt my nose in where it doesn't belong. I'm sure it's just some glitch on the website or something, but I was swiping and I saw your fiance on this thing. I just wanted to give you a heads up. No problem. The thing is, if, as one of the commenters said, if your friend or former friend reacts in a really negative way, doesn't matter because you guys aren't that close anymore. But I do think it is the right thing to do. So I would do it. I would let him know. I think you'd feel bad if, I guess I was going to say if they got married and had kids, but I guess they already have a kid together, which adds even more craziness to this whole scenario. But I do think you'd feel worse.
Yeah, and that's like I don't know, if they didn't have a kid together, I probably would say something. I would feel more obligated to, but the fact that they do have a kid for some reason kind of changes my judgment with it, where I would say, probably it's the best case to not say anything, because if they already have a kid together and they're engaged, they're in a committed relationship, whether it is polyamorous or monogamous, whatever that might be, they probably are in a committed relationship with each other. At least I would assume.
If they, years and years later, he finds out this chickie has been sleeping around the entire time, and it's just a complete betrayal of their entire married life. So I would do it. I'd bite the bullet and do it. Worst case, you lose a friend that you don't see that much anymore. We'll get to more saucy, scintillating advice in just 1 second. First, though, you know that inflation is going through the roof. It's cleaning out your pockets with really bad per bottle, saving you big. Use promo Michael. If you're not interested, says one person, another person, all details aside, seeing a total of $115 being spent on a first date is sickening, because that's far too little to impress a woman. I don't know. Okay. Always offer to pay half and always refuse to pay more than half. Stick to this at all costs. Works for any gender. No. What are you? What are you? There are a lot of words I want to use right now that are not family friendly. Are you a girly man? What do you mean always? Every gender just needs to pay half, and you should never hold the door for a woman, and you should, I'm a male feminist. Yeah, okay, bro. Prob's a hot take, but I find that a valid reason to no longer want to pursue something. I believe whoever initiated the date should pay. Letting you split the whole thing, if offered, wouldn't be a turnoff to me.
At least that's always my philosophy with men and women going on dates, or just anyone, any gender really, going on dates, and it's like who pays. I think the person who initiated the date is the one to pay, but I also believe that if you're going to be most fair, splitting it would probably be the best. I mean, you know, again, I still have a little bit of like, you know, social conservatism to that point where it's like, okay, I'm the man. I wouldn't be like absolutely like not wanting to pay for the date, because I would at the end of the day, you know. Obviously I would ask, you know, like, hey, do you want to split it? But if, you know, the woman or person I was on the date with said no, then I would have no problem paying for it. So, I mean, at least that's my philosophy. But yeah, I think it really comes down to who initiated the date. And usually the men initiate the date, so they pay for it. But, you know, that would be my philosophy with it.
But splitting way unevenly is. Your argument is a euphemism for buy things for me. Yeah, sort of, because men and women are different. Okay, let's see the full post. I, 24-year-old female, met this guy on Hinge, 32-year-old male, and he invited me out to dinner. Okay. He chose the time and place. We made it there, and it was a 30-minute wait, so he suggested getting a drink at a bar across the street. We ended up getting our appetizer there too, since the wait was a bit long. I offered to pay for the drinks, didn't think he would let me, but he said it's okay, I could pay for the next dinner, I guess. The drinks and appetizer was $45. He paid. We made it to dinner, and it rounded up to about $70. I paid. Oh my gosh. This is extremely unattractive to me, only because it was a first date. He knew he would get me to pay for dinner and ordered more appetizers and lots of extras. He chose the place and initiated the date. Oh my gosh. But I ended up paying. Outside of this, the conversation was okay. Honestly, the monetary portion of the date threw me off. It was pretty gross to me. I've never had that happen. He texted me, but I haven't texted back. I think I'm no longer interested. Is this a good reason to cut him off? Yes, it is. It absolutely is. I'm not totally opposed to splitting.
Yeah, I would say, at least from what I've heard from the post, is I would probably cut the dude off. Because again, I mean, like when it really comes down to it, is that if he's the one that initiated the date, he's the one that should pay like default. You know, if he wants to talk about splitting the bill with you, I think that would have been a lot more like just like upfront and like civil. But I think that not giving the option to split the bill and you know, kind of just paying separate bills, even though he paid the one that was like cheaper and you paid the one that was more expensive, and you were the one that did not initiate the date, that to me just screams like, you know, you should already get out of the relationship with this dude. Even if you went on one date, it's probably one date too many.
Splitting checks, especially now people go on like 1,000 dates every day because of all the dating apps, and you can, especially if you're in a big city, you just always are swiping right. So I'm not in all cases 100% opposed to splitting the check. I would never do it. I mean, I find it personally kind of repugnant, but I understand why some people do it now, especially if they're much younger, especially if they don't have, you know, any kind of savings or anything. But oh my gosh, to have the woman pay for dinner. You invite the woman out, you pick the place, and then you have the woman pay for more than half of the bill. That is so lame. Oh my gosh. Just as a rule, this is a rule in all of life. If you invite someone to dinner, and especially if you pick the place, but just in general, if you invite someone to dinner, you are expected to pick up the bill. Now, the other person might say, here, let's split it. And maybe, you know, you can do that little dance and then you split it. Oh, okay, fine. But it is just, man, woman, child, anyone you happen to be having a meal with, if you invite them out, it is expected that you will pay for it. When did people don't learn manners anymore? Well, you get the last laugh, I guess, because this jerk doesn't end up getting a nice girlfriend. So, haha, too bad for him. Okay, last relationship problem, and then I've got other patients that I've got to see. I can't just deal with Reddit all day. He said I have potential if I lost weight. Okay. All right. So the responses. It's code for I will sleep with you, but as soon as I find someone else, I'm gone. You know what will make you perfect? Losing the 175 pounds of this rude jerk of a guy, says someone else. If a man applied this logic, he'd be forever alone. Sure, but men and women are different, so whatever. A girl canceled a date after my confession that I'm not exactly 6 feet tall. I'm 5'11". Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, anyone who says I'm 6 feet tall is 5'11", because if you're 6 feet tall, you say you're 6'1". Okay, let's see the full story. I, a 23-year-old female, had a third date with this guy, a 23-year-old guy. Everything was fine until he mentioned that he already finds me cute, but I would be perfect if I lost weight. Oh my gosh. I've always been upfront about the fact that I'm on the larger side. I'm 175 centimeters and weigh 80 kilograms and are apparently French or something. Why are you using those silly liberal measurements? Whatever. I don't know. 80, I don't know what the...
Oh my gosh. Liberal measurements from Matt Walsh here. Or I mean, Michael Knowles. So 175 centimeters, and I would have to look that up. I have to look this up. Hold on. What is that? 80 kilograms to pounds. That's 176 pounds to 175 centimeters to feet. 5'7". I mean, that's not horrible. I'll say that.
I don't know what that is. I'm an American. Speak American, damn it. So it's not like it was a surprise for him before we met. I asked him, why are we even here then? He said that he would find it stupid to stop himself from dating me, which I personally think that's weird because it's clearly an important thing for him. My self-esteem isn't at its highest to begin with, so this definitely isn't helping either. So, okay, the producers tell me that's 170 pounds. Okay, so, a little bit on the larger side, but you're the guy, whatever. I mean, people come in all shapes and sizes, that's fine. And the guy is saying, I think you're attractive, but you're not exactly perfect for how I want you now. So, figure it out and then we can be together. Yeah, you should run screaming from this guy. Because it's not merely that the guy finds thinner women more attractive. That's not even the problem. The problem is that he thinks that your little love affair, I don't really like the word relationship. It's so clinical and modern and lame and millennial. We're in a relationship. We're in a partnership. It's like you sound like you're in an accounting firm or something. So in your love affair, what he's making the whole thing about is his tastes, his fantasies, his idea and his idol of what his beloved will be. And so what he's saying is, you almost kind of fit into that. So I'm going to try to squeeze, pardon my imagery here, I'm going to try to squeeze it and make it all fit into this box that I've created of the person I want to be in love with. And you'll sort of do for now. You're almost there. But that's not really love, right? He's not in love with you, or it doesn't really seem to have any care for you at all. He loves this. He has an infatuation. He has a love of this image he's concocted for himself, and he's going to try to superimpose that image over you or vice versa. But he sounds like just a big loser. Loser. This guy who says for you to lose weight, he's a big loser, if you ask me, and you should run away from him. Okay,
True.
That's I guess a lot of the modern dating advice with these schmucky dudes. This was the schmucky dude episode. I'm sure there are crazy women out there too who write into these things, but this seems to be the schmucky.
Okay, at least for that last, the number 5 one there with the woman being, apparently too much weight for that guy. Yeah, I totally agree. At least hearing her height and weight, she's definitely not like morbidly obese or even obese or anything. She's just a little bit bigger, and somehow this dude says, she's not good enough for him, which, whatever, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but, if you have too strict of requirements, then, you're probably not going to end up with anyone because you have this ideal of someone, and probably no one you ever meet is actually going to meet that ideal itself.
Dude episode. A lot of schmucky dudes around, and ladies, you should flee. I'm Michael Knowles, the love guru, the love doctor here at the Daily Wire. We will see you next Valentine's Day. Arr.
So Elon Musk is now a target of the left. Again, like Rogan, he's a target of the left because he refuses to abide by the strictures of political correctness. He says, for example, that capitalism is good and that his company, its growth is good, and that Elizabeth Warren is an idiot, right? He says all of these things publicly. And so it was only a matter of time before the media tried to find an employee to accuse the company of racism, and now this is what they have done. According to the Daily Beast, last week, former Tesla employee...
You know, it's something I wonder is why Elon is so, like, idolized on the right. I think literally because, like, I mean, he might lean conservative. I don't know. It's not like I don't know if, like, he speaks on politics a lot. I've never seen it. But at least from my opinion is that, you know, the reason the right really likes Elon Musk is because he's like a big free speech guy. He really speaks his mind on a lot of things, which kind of ignorantly does, because even though he's a very savvy businessman in electric cars and also like an engineer of rockets, but he seems that he got to this point to where he thinks that he has a take on everything just because he's smart. And I think for someone in order to be smart, you have to be able to accept that you do not know everything and you aren't like the smartest person ever. You know, you have to sometimes say, I don't know. And that's something that Elon really doesn't ever say. I guess I would call him like a pseudo intellectual, because even though he is, you know, quite smart, at least when it comes to the business side, and quite smart when it comes to rockets, I don't think he's as knowledgeable as he comes off in many other things, which, again, it's fine. You can have your opinions on things, but I think that is, like, I don't know, I guess kind of the reason the right likes him. And also because, like, he's such a big, like, capitalist that, you know, obviously the right loves that. So, and he's got a lot of young fans. So I think the reason the right does like him is because he kind of just, like, breeds that capitalism, like, to a lot of young people, and kind of gets them on the train of, like, capitalism's amazing, it's the best system out there, you know, we need to keep this, and we need to have less regulations because that would help our, you know, country prosper even more.
Kaylin Barker filed a lawsuit against the electric car maker for allegedly disregarding her complaints of racial discrimination, saying that being black worker at Tesla's renowned California factory is to be forced to step back in time and suffer painful abuses reminiscent of the Jim Crow era. Okay, so first of all, that ain't true, and I'll tell you why that ain't true, because in the Jim Crow era, you wouldn't have been working at the Tesla factory. It is hilarious to me how people don't seem to understand what Jim Crow was in the first place. The 25-year-old, who is black and gay, claims a white coworker at the company's Lathrop plant called her the N-word and assaulted her with a hot grinding tool. After Barker complained to Human Resources, Tesla allegedly retaliated by withholding her wages. I do not believe this. I straight up don't believe this. The reason I don't believe this is because if someone assaults you with a hot grinding tool, you know what you do? You go to the cops. You don't go to HR, you go to the cops. If someone assaults you with a hot grinding tool, if someone calls you the N-word, you think any HR department in America doesn't fire that person and do a full investigation? No. Any HR department in America, this is literally their job. And Tesla...
Well, not if the person is really liked in the company, right? So, I mean, people get away with things they do inside the company a lot. So I wouldn't necessarily say, like, oh, just because, you know, that this person did this and they were accused of this, you know, they should have got fired. Yeah, they should have, but if they were well liked by the company, for instance, I think he said that this person was a manager. Maybe they were a well liked manager, and, you know, again, this person, the accuser, could be accusing this person that actually assaulted them of, you know, more than actually happened. But, you know, I would say that, yeah, in a perfect world, this person, if they actually did it, would be fired from the company instantly. But I mean, some things get covered up.
Is a company worth billions and billions and billions. It's the most valuable car maker on planet Earth. You think their HR department is going to blow off a claim that someone called you the N-word at work? Are you kidding me? I don't believe this for half a second.
They could.
Barker's civil suit is one of multiple cases in recent months to paint a disturbing picture of a hostile work environment for women and people of color at the clean energy giants' factories. And it comes a mere 4 months after the jury awarded another former employee, Owen Diaz, nearly $137 million over racism he encountered in the workplace, which included coworkers hurling racial epithets and telling him to go back to Africa. Now Tesla is facing a civil rights complaint from California regulators over employees' accusations of pervasive racial discrimination. Last month, the California Department of Fair Housing and Employment issued a notice of cause finding and mandatory dispute resolution following an investigation into undisclosed allegations of race discrimination and harassment at unspecified Tesla locations. So, question. This notice of cause finding and mandatory dispute resolution includes, just to get this straight, undisclosed allegations of race discrimination. So they've not been disclosed. We have no idea what the allegations are. At an unspecified Tesla location. So what we now know is something bad allegedly happened at a time in a place. We don't know what the thing is, where it happened, or when. Let's open a government investigation. The agency gave notice that based upon the evidence collected, it believes it has grounds to file a civil complaint against Tesla. As for Diaz's multi-million-dollar case, Tesla's report said the company does not believe the facts and law.
Okay, so what I was trying to say there before I almost died in a corner is that maybe the reason they're not giving this much information out to the public is so Tesla, the company, because obviously, like you said, they're, you know, the richest car maker in the world. They probably have really good lawyers, so they don't want any information that hasn't already been said actually be leaked out. So that's probably why the case is actually quite ambiguous and not gives a lot of information. At least that would be my guess. I don't know. Maybe Ben Shapiro would know better because he went to Harvard and law. So
justify the verdict, and that it has requested a retrial or reduction in the jury's award. Tesla's report also noted it received an SEC subpoena last November requesting information on how billionaire CEO Elon Musk was complying with a 2018 settlement with the securities watchdog that required his tweets to be vetted by a company lawyer. So you now have the government cracking down on Elon Musk's tweets. Yes, clearly this is not a power game. This is really just about preventing racial discrimination. It's not a power game in which you find a company you don't like and then you target it with racial discrimination. And then the media whips everybody into a frenzy. And then government regulators of the left decide to come in and crack down on the company. I mean, this is truly frightening stuff. It really is. Now, good for Musk for not surrendering to it. But if you want to see somebody surrender to it, all you have to do is take a look at the NFL. And here's the thing. The philosophy seems to be, if I admit that I am racist, then maybe they will leave me alone. And this is exactly what Roger Goodell, a horrible NFL commissioner, has been doing at the NFL. So, former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores filed a lawsuit this week in Manhattan federal court. We've discussed at length the Brian Flores lawsuit. It's garbage. It's a terrible lawsuit. It looks like it was written in crayon by a 7-year-old. As a lawyer, I can firmly guarantee you, there's not even an allegation of a violation of law breaking. There isn't. All of the statutes that are cited are not justified. There's no class action because the plaintiffs are not similarly situated. Brian Flores himself has said on open TV that he has no justification for suggesting that any specific incident involving him was motivated by race, rather than maybe by the fact that he hasn't developed the Miami Dolphins quarterback and that his record with the Dolphins kind of sucks. He's not that good a coach.
Okay, if you're literally okay, I can actually skip this next video then because this was about the NFL diversity, but it looks like he's talking about it here. So basically, the Brian Flores lawsuit is Brian Flores, the coach, was supposed to be, the Dolphins coach for 3 years, and he did finish his 3 years, and he got fired, I believe, because of his record, they said, and he wasn't tanking games. So he was supposed to be losing games and accepting a $100,000 check per game he lost. And instead of doing that, he, was on the Sigma male grind set and said, fuck that, I'm actually going to win games. And he actually had back-to-back winning seasons with the Miami Dolphins. He was actually a good coach. And in the first year, I mean, you can't really count the first year for a head coach because it's like, at the end of the day, it's your first year with the team. You're just getting acclimated, so you can't really be too optimistic on the future, or at least on that first year. But for what I would say is in his first year, he did beat Tom Brady at the end of that year. That was like 2019. So he actually did really well. And his record is one game under 500. So I think he's 25-26 in his career with the Dolphins, which is really good. Yeah, he's obviously not 500, but there's a lot of coaches in the NFL. And I'm an avid viewer of the NFL. I would like to think I know a good amount of information about it. There's a lot of coaches that have very negative records that are nowhere near 500 that still get, obviously, more tries and more options and just another job. They'll have another chance at the end of the day. Brian Flores, I think he deserved another chance. I legitimately thought he was a good coach. He was winning with a really, really bad team somehow this year. He started like 1-8 and won like 8 straight games or something like that, and ended with a 9-8 record. So he was legitimately a good coach in my opinion, and anyone who says otherwise really did not watch the Dolphins and realize how bad they were as a team. Like, they did not have a good team whatsoever, and they legitimately were very close to actually making the playoffs. I mean, they actually got a positive record, and if they didn't lose like the first 8 games of the season, they probably would have made the playoffs again. So, at least in my opinion, Brian Flores is a really, really good coach, and I think he's tremendously underrated.
Instead, he sued the NFL, and the NFL, because they believe that the publicity is bad, started doing what all these companies, except for Musk, do, and he started self-flagellating. That's exactly what Goodell did. So he issued a memo on Saturday morning to all 32 teams, in which he said we must, quote, acknowledge that the results of their efforts to promote diversity with respect to head coaches have been unacceptable. The efforts have been unacceptable because there aren't enough black coaches. 70% of the players are black. Seems like it's acceptable with regard to the players. And by the way, since when is the player pool the coach pool?
Usually
really,
it is.
This is 2 separate pools. If you take a look at college coaches, how many of those college coaches were wildly successful?
Okay, so usually the coaching pool, especially in sports, is also a part of the player pool, because normally a good amount of the coaches have played the actual sport and have played the game on some level, either in college or professionally or something along those lines. That's why they're connected. I mean, yes, they're not a one-to-one comparison, but they are very close. So I think it's very disingenuous to just say, oh, well, that they're not connected whatsoever. No, they definitely are.
Successful players. Many of them are just people who coached high school, and then they coached Division III, and they coached Division I. But no matter, Goodell has to pretend obeisance to this ridiculous lawsuit. So Goodell's memo is his first reported comments since former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores filed that lawsuit. In the memo, Goodell says the league will reevaluate all policies, guidelines, and initiatives relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, including as they relate to gender. The league will also retain outside experts to assist in this review. He says racism and any form of discrimination is contrary to the NFL's values. We have made significant efforts to promote diversity and adopted numerous policies and programs, which have produced positive change in many areas. However, we must acknowledge that, particularly with respect to head coaches, the results have been unacceptable. So not unacceptable with regard to special teams coaches or offensive line coaches or D-line coaches, but with results of head coaches, all you have to do is see.
Well, that's because the Rooney Rule was legitimately created for black head coaches. So the fact that we aren't seeing more black head coaches, because when the Rooney Rule was actually implemented, I think there was 3 black coaches at the time. And now in modern day, there's currently 1, and that's Mike Tomlin. So obviously the Rooney Rule was not doing as it should be, because if it was truly doing with what it should be, there should be more black head coaches, or at least the same number. I mean, at least if there was, let's say 3 or 4, you could say it was, quite successful for even just maintaining black head coaches in the NFL. But the fact that, there's only 1, and by the way, this rule was implemented 20 years ago. So yeah, obviously there's a big failing on the NFL's part if they can, not implement this rule correctly. I mean, yes, you could talk about black head coaches as other coaches, not just the head coaches, because again, that's not the only coach, but it was specifically implemented for head coaches.
That there are not enough black head coaches. Now, they're gauging that by percentage of the NFL that is black. Well, why not gauge it by percentage of the American population that's black? Because that looks more proportional. Why aren't there 3% of head coaches who are Asian? Why aren't there 0.5%, 0.3% of the NFL's players who are Jewish? Why not? Anyway, Goodell says, we will reevaluate and examine all policies. We are retaining outside experts. Our goal is simple. Make our efforts and those of the clubs more effective so the real and tangible results will be achieved. Now, here is the hilarious thing. The folks who are using charges of racism as a tool of power, they're giving away the game now. I mean, they're really, really giving away the game. And it's pretty hysterically funny. So, for example, Stephen A. Smith is very pissed. Why is Stephen A. Smith pissed? Well, I mean, first of all, it's a day ending in Y, so Stephen A. Smith is pissed. But Stephen A. Smith is also pissed because after Brian Flores was fired, the Dolphins hired to replace him the San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel. So Mike McDaniel is multiracial. Right? McDaniel is the league's 4th minority head coach. This is not good enough for Stephen A. Smith. And Mike McDaniel is multiracial. So here he was explaining that.
Okay, I think that, with the Mike McDaniel thing, I think it's a perception thing that, okay, even though he identifies as multiracial, he really doesn't look that. Now, again, that shouldn't be the case of, just subjecting someone well, you don't look black enough. But, what I'm trying to say is that, you can't just fire a black head coach and then hire a minority one and say, hey, we're all good. We hired a multiracial dude. We met our quota. That's not technically that's not going to get you through it, especially because Mike McDaniel has never been a head coach in the NFL. So it seemed quite odd that they did that. I mean, legitimately, if there's no sort of race, biases in there, then they legitimately hired a coach that did not have a head coaching position yet. So the fact that they can lose more games next season, because obviously Brian Flores was not doing that for them. He was actually winning them games, which, again, that's not what a lot of teams like to do, because they obviously want to lose as many games as possible so they can get higher draft picks, which, I think is really bad for the game. But, it's just the fact of the matter of NFL teams now, and really any sport, is that they need basically high draft picks, and they need, better players so they can honestly just win the championship. And they don't want to grow and develop their team at least in the old days how it was thought about. Now they just want to get the first round draft picks every single year, the highest ones, and then win with rookies that are on their rookie contracts. They don't have to pay a lot. I mean, honestly, it's the cheaper way of winning, because and it's also the easier way, because it really doesn't take a lot of work. Okay, you just have to suck for years and years on end, and then eventually you will obviously get a good amount of players in the draft, and then you could obviously win the championship at that point. And it doesn't even require a lot of skill. And hey, you're still making money at the end of the day, because guess what? People are still going to go to the games regardless of the teams are losing, because every NFL fan base is pretty damn big. So yeah, it's a cheap way to win a championship, but it seems like that is the case for a lot of NFL teams now. That's the strategy.
No. You see, when we accuse the NFL and the Dolphins of racism, what we mean is only racism against my friends. So here's Stephen A. Smith.
When we look at Mike McDaniels, we wish him nothing but the best. What did you say? He's mixed? Is that what you said, Molly?
Multiracial is how he identifies.
That's how he identifies himself, multiracial.
Yeah, multiracial.
Okay, fine. No problem. This was a conversation last week about black men. What I'm saying is the conversation last week pertaining to the Brian Flores situation is the scarcity of black men who have been given opportunities to be head coaches in the National Football League.
His father is of black descent, by the way. So, what? But again, it's only about the black people that Stephen A. Smith says about. By the way, you want to know the real proof in the pudding? This is the best one. Okay, so the Houston Texans hired Lovie Smith. First of all, crappy hire. Lovie Smith was not a good football coach. Okay, just going to put it out there as a Bears fan, Lovie Smith was not a good football coach. And by the way, in his last couple of years in the NFL, which is in terms of as a head coach, His actual stats were garbaggio.
I mean, I think a fact of Lovie Smith is like, okay, he wasn't the best with the Bears, obviously, but I think he got fired his last year of the Bears, and they went 10-6. Now, again, they were a good team; they should have won, but at the same time, it's like he literally got the Bears to 10-6, and he was working with Jay Cutler at the end of the day. We have to remember that. So, I mean, I think it is disingenuous to forget that, but. Yeah, I mean, I think Lovie Smith was an okay coach.
He has a career 92-90 record, which is not a stellar record in the NFL.
That's pretty good.
He used to lose in the
playoffs.
playoffs.
A lot of coaches.
Like, pretty much every year. He had 2 good seasons early on. In 2004, he went 5-11 with the Bears, and then in 2005, they went to the NFC divisional game. And this is when Brian Urlacher was on the team. They went 11-5. Then they went 13-3 and went to the Super Bowl and lost with Rex Grossman as quarterback. You can't put that on Lovie Smith. Rex Grossman was not a very good quarterback. But then he basically was terrible the rest of his Bears career. They were mediocre every single year. He couldn't develop a quarterback no matter what he did. And then he went to Tampa Bay in 2015. And his record with Tampa Bay was a whopping 8-24. And now, lest you think that is a good record, that means that he won 8 times and lost 24 times for a winning percentage of .250. So Lovie Smith is not like some great shakes as a head coach. But the Houston Texans decided to promote Lovie Smith to their head coaching role. Apparently, they decided that they were going to interview 3 candidates twice. Josh McCown, the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, and Brian Flores. Okay, so they actually interviewed Flores. Herein lies the problem, and this is the really funny part. So after they hired Lovie Smith, Brian Flores then said, so Brian Flores put out a statement about Lovie Smith, and this is my favorite thing, okay, because supposedly this is just about empowering black men, right? This is the only reason why he filed the lawsuit, was to empower black men. Well, actually, Brian Flores is upset that Lovie Smith got hired. Quote, is from his lawyer's statement. Mr. Flores is happy to hear that the Texans have hired a black head coach, Lovie Smith.
Well, then
as
he's
Mr.
not
Flores'
upset.
goal in bringing his case is to provide real opportunities for black and minority candidates to be considered for coaching and executive positions within the NFL. However, we would be remiss not to mention that Mr. Flores was one of 3 finalists for the Texans head coach position. And after a great interview and mutual interest, it is obvious the only reason Flores was not selected was his decision to stand up against racial inequality across the NFL.
Well, yeah, that
so they
makes
hired a black
sense.
guy, Lovie Smith. And Brian Flores is like, you're still racist because you didn't hire me.
No,
yeah,
because
we know.
a lawsuit was
We know.
going on. You know that.
I mean, we know what the agenda here is. Come on. And this is always the agenda from the left. It's just this shtick. It's a ridiculous shtick. Okay, and the Washington Post has a piece in the opinion section today. Same kind of shtick. Quote, I used to work on the Hill. The Dear White staffer's Instagram account is a long overdue reckoning. It's by a woman named Melissa Sullivan. And she talks about how she landed an internship on Capitol Hill and people were abusing her because she was a first-generation Latina American. And then there is this new Instagram account by a bunch of people of color called Dear White Staffers on Instagram that is supposed to be ripping into the treatment of people of minority status in the legislative offices. And so she says she's very happy about all of this. She says, in response to that launch, hundreds of current and former Hill staffers began submitting anonymous stories about their bosses, pay inequity, sexual harassment, racism, and the harmful consequences of working on Capitol Hill, drug use, depression, and anxiety. Now, here's the thing. If you actually have been sexually harassed in a congressional office, that's a lawsuit, is it not? Where are the lawsuits? People are pretty litigious in this country. If actually you have been experiencing real pay inequity in violation of civil rights law, where are the lawsuits? Especially because it sounds like this is a really bipartisan or maybe a Democrat issue. Where are the lawsuits? If you're accusing people of racism, you have a lawsuit on your hands. So where's the lawsuit? And the answer is there is no lawsuit. What is the end goal, according to this piece? Quote, the survey has spurred an unprecedented conversation about salary disparities and how staff can institute more workplace protections. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and a handful of other members now openly say they support unionization efforts for Hill staff. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Ben doesn't
Democratic
like unions,
Party
obviously.
buying off all of their own racism and supposed sexism and all of this by saying it's time to unionize, which is precisely what they wanted to do in the first place. Charges of racism as just another tool in the portfolio toward the pursuit of power, as always. It's never about the data. It's never about the actual
Yes,
on-the-ground
because unions
situation.
are bad
Because
and
when people are
unionizing
sexually
is bad
harassed,
for
we all
workers.
agree. Bad. Punishable. When people are hit with actual racism, we all agree. very bad. In some cases punishable, depending on the kind of racism you're receiving under law. Okay, but that's not what they want. That's not what the left wants. What the left just wants is to throw out accusations of things that they can't verify and then get you to kowtow to them and give them enormous power. That's what they want on every subject, from COVID to race, on all of them. I know what you're thinking. It's time to binge some more Ben Shapiro videos. Well, you are right. You should. But first, like and subscribe. Perfect. I'll see you in the next video. The New York Times ran an amazing piece over the weekend all about the use by Democrats of dark money. So they've been complaining for years about dark money. Oh, it's so terrible. Look at all these super PACs and these Republicans and campaign finance. And now we learn, of course, that when it comes to the use of dark money, Democrats are the best at it. They are just incredible at using dark money from unnamed sources. Kenneth Vogel and Shane Goldmacher reporting for the New York Times. For much of the last decade, Democrats complained with a mix of indignation, frustration, and envy that Republicans and their allies were spending hundreds of millions of difficult-to-trace dollars to influence politics. Dark money became a dirty word, as the left warned of the threat of corruption posed by corporations and billionaires that were spending unlimited sums through loosely regulated nonprofits which did not disclose their donors' identities. Then came the 2020 election. Spurred by opposition to then-President Trump, donors and operatives allied with the Democratic Party embraced dark money with fresh zeal, pulling even with, and by some measures, surpassing Republicans in 2020 spending, according to a New York Times analysis of tax filings and other data. Now, realistically, depending on how you count dark money, Democrats have always had a leg up in this area. Right? Union money is effectively dark money, and unions have been spending billions of dollars on our elections for decades at this point. And if you're going to look at how Democrats spent actual dark money in the last year, you really have to look at all the donations that giant corporations were making to Black Lives Matter associated left-wing groups that were doing Get Out.
Okay, and Republican, there aren't any big Republican donations like whatsoever been? Like, really?
Vote efforts. They spent something like $20 billion, like $20 billion over the last year and a half, last couple of years, since the George Floyd debacle. Since then, they've spent tens of billions of dollars. A lot of that was poured in the immediate aftermath of the Floyd riots, and that, of course, had an impact on the election. According to the New York Times, even using their analysis, they say 15 of the most politically active nonprofit organizations that generally align with the Democratic Party spent more than $1.5 billion in 2020, compared to roughly $900 million spent by a comparable sample of 15 of the most politically active groups aligned with the GOP.
Nice.
The findings reveal the growth and ascendancy of a shadow political infrastructure that is reshaping American politics as mega donors to these nonprofits take advantage of loose disclosure laws to make multi-million-dollar outlays in total secrecy. Some good government activists worry the exploding role of undisclosed cash threatens to accelerate the erosion of trust in the country's political system. Democrats' newfound success in harnessing this funding also exposes the stark tension between their efforts to win elections and their commitment to curtail secretive political spending by the super rich. They don't have any commitment to curtail secret political spending by the super rich. They just don't want the Republicans doing it. They like ripping on the Koch brothers, but the minute you mention George Soros, they're like, oh, you only hate him because he's a Jew. Meanwhile, Sheldon Adelson was a very, very bad man. And it's all hypocrisy all the way down. A single cryptically named entity, according to the New York Times, that has served as a clearinghouse of undisclosed cash for the left, the 1630 Fund, received mystery donations as large as $50 million and disseminated grants to more than 200 groups while spending a total of $410 million in 2020, more than the DNC. Nonprofits do not abide by the same transparency rules or donation limits as parties or campaigns, though they can underwrite many similar activities, advertising, polling, research, voter registration, and mobilization, legal fights over voting rules. The scale of secret spending is such that even as small donors have become a potent force in politics, undisclosed money dwarfed the 2020 campaign fundraising of President Biden, who raised $1 billion, or Trump, who raised $810 million. Heading into the midterm elections, Democrats are warning major donors not to give in to the financial complacency that afflicts the party in power. Republicans are rushing to level the dark money playing field to take advantage of what is expected to be a favorable political climate in 2020. At stake is not just control of Congress, but whether Republican donors will become more unified with Trump out of the White House. Two Republican secret money groups focused on Congress said their combined fundraising reached nearly $100 million in 2021, far more than they raised in 2019. But again, none of this is actually counting extraordinary amounts of money that were poured in by corporations like Facebook into voter registration in particular areas. None of it is counting that $20 billion poured into Black Lives Matter front groups by corporations over the course of 2020. It's crazy. And by the way, some of the biggest money raisers were some of the people who
Okay, so basically what I'm getting from this is Ben is saying that the money is not going where I want it to go, and for some reason that, Democrats are raising more money, so that's just horrible, and obviously donating to Black Lives Matter is just horrible for a corporation to do, and why would they ever do that for any reason whatsoever?
who made a bunch of money by shifting into the full anti-Trump, anti-Republican camp. So, for example, Defending Democracy Together, co-founded in 2018 by Bill Kristol, spent $40 million in 2020, almost $11 million of it from the 1630 fund. And so, bottom line is this. It's always going to be about money, always and forever. It doesn't mean that the money necessarily wins elections. It doesn't. But if you believe that the powers in elections are always to the right, that all the secret money in elections has always been the Koch brothers, the nefarious Koch brothers, et cetera, that is a lie, and it's been a lie for a very long time. And now the New York Times is exposing that lie. And by the way, this is prompting people on the left to get angry about it. So Mark Elias, who is one of the main players behind the Russia collusion hoax, he's a Hillary Clinton lawyer, basically, he tweeted in response to this story, quote, "If the media is not going to be pro-democracy, it is probably time for the courts to revisit New York Times versus Sullivan. The case was premised on a role in democracy the mainstream press seems increasingly disinterested in playing." So how dare the New York Times report the truth, which is that Democrats are spending a ton of dark money. Instead, let's shut down the free press. These people are very, very committed to their particular principles. They have so many principles left, except that they don't. They don't actually have any principles at all. It is all about power. It's always been about power. I hope you enjoy.
All right,
This
and
is from a really
Matt
important
Walsh.
story here from the New York Post. It says a model has claimed that she doesn't need a boyfriend because she's so in love with herself.
Good for
her. Luana Sandian said that she is autosexual, which is a self-love relationship that can go beyond the erotic sphere. The divorced model adds that she doesn't need a boyfriend to experience sexual pleasure and revealed that she will even be happy enjoying Valentine's Day alone.
Nice.
She says, being autosexual, as I see it, is along the same lines as being an independent person. Luana claimed that she's not thinking about having a relationship with someone else at the moment. She continued, "I found myself single. It's the best thing a woman can do for herself." And she explains what autosexuality is. She says, "It means I'm attracted to myself. I always felt that way. I just didn't know there was a name for it." And then she continues, and this was interesting. "It's nice to know I'm not crazy or a massive narcissist. It's something real that a lot of people experience. It was very important to find out that I'm not alone. As sexy as that may sound, and it is, it's kind of self-love on steroids. There was always a part of me that thought it was weird, so it's nice to have this statement that it's normal." And so we see the same process carried out yet again, which of course, by the way, it is narcissism. I mean, it's like pretty much the definition of narcissism.
No, I don't think that's narcissism.
Being literally in love with yourself. I would be interested in seeing the headline 10 years from now. The headline now is model claims she doesn't need a boyfriend because she's so in love with herself. 10 years from now, the headline is ex-model.
All right. I guess to touch on narcissism. Narcissism is thinking that you yourself are somehow inherently better than everyone else. So I really don't know how Matt Walsh could have fucked that up. But, again, maybe he is worse than I thought he was. But, I would think that he's a little bit smarter and he could figure that out. But yeah, she loves herself and doesn't want to be in a relationship with anyone else. That's, she's attracted to herself. So it's not asexual technically. That's like not being attracted to anyone or not really wanting a relationship or sex. But yeah, it's honestly a simple and easier life to live because, if you're attracted to yourself, you never have to worry about, being in a relationship with anyone else and dealing with those complications. So, at least I look at it in the sense of like, oh, well, that's obviously pretty nice. But, Matt Walsh looks at it as, you're not straight, something's wrong with you.
Says that she's alone and miserable because of rampant misogyny. That's going to be the headline 10 years from now because the thing that these women don't understand is that your youth and your beauty, all of that fades pretty quickly.
That's true.
And it's just one of the sad realities of being a mortal human being. And And we're being introduced to a lot of the realities of being a mortal human being in the last few years, and people don't seem to like any of them. And that's just, it's true. A lot of it is really not very fun. But another one of those realities, along with the fact that you're going to die, another one is that if you live kind of a normal length of life, most of your life is going to be spent not youthful and physically beautiful. The majority of your life, you will be in that state. So what you have right now is very temporary and very fleeting.
Oh, that's it. Damn.
And if that's all you are, if that's the only thing you care to cultivate, then once that goes, you're going to have nothing. And when you're walking around now and saying, well, it doesn't matter because I'm young, I'm beautiful, I don't need to try to impress anybody, I don't need companionship with anybody, people are fawning over me. You know, when you act that way, eventually that goes away. You lose the youth and beauty, but people remember what a miserable person you are. And so you've alienated everyone in your life. You don't have your beauty to fall back on. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life just alone, miserable, and that's what it's going to be. Well, one thing I can tell you as a 4-star chef myself.
Okay, Matt Walsh with the goddamn ad. Okay. So his take here is that, you know, your beauty fades, so why would you want to, you know, be alone and be attracted to yourself? But, like, if she is legitimately attracted to herself, then it shouldn't matter because should be attracted to herself always. So she, you know, should never get to that point where she actually does want to be in a relationship with someone, because at that point, why would it matter? Because she's already attracted to herself. As long as that holds, then none of what Matt Walsh said really matters at that point.
She's divorced. Her marriage didn't work out. Big shocker there. And then she says that she went, I guess, on the internet, as people do, and she discovered that there's a name for this. There's a label, and that other people feel the same way she does about themselves. And just discovering that she's not alone, which is kind of ironic because she says that she wants to be alone. Yet she wants to be alone. She's okay being alone. Yet it was very important to her that she's not alone in feeling this way at the same time. So she wants to be alone, but she also doesn't want to be alone. So you find that tension there. And so it was important for her to find out that there are other people in this quote-unquote community and that there's a label for it. And the minute you can label it and you discover that there are other people that carry the same label, that in your mind, that legitimizes it. And that makes it a legitimate identity. And thus an identity that deserves to be celebrated. And probably we should take autosexual, if they're not already, and add them to the alphabet, LGBTQIA. Maybe, is autosexual one of the A's that's already in there? I don't know. And we see, this is the same process we've seen many times. Where you take people, they have a certain compulsion, a compulsion that they should be resisting and suppressing. In her case, it's a compulsion towards...
Okay, so you should resist liking yourself. Okay. I mean, I really don't understand that. It seems like, again, you know, if you're not straight, something's wrong with you. And being attracted to yourself is somehow wrong when, it's like literally, to me, one of the least, I would say, controversial ones. Like, I don't know how this would get, like, conservatives mad. Like, you know, she legitimately just, likes herself, and somehow that is a delusion and a compulsion that she should not follow because she needs to get married and have kids.
Excessive selfishness. It's bad, okay? People might experience it, but it's bad. You should try to suppress it. You should try to be a better person. You should try to develop some virtue.
Yeah, because being a better person is not liking
And maybe
yourself.
in a different time, someone like herself, that's what she would have done. Because she would have assumed that there's something wrong with feeling this way. She would have assumed that she's the only one. She's not going to go out in public and talk to people
because
face to
it's
face
something wrong
and
about
say, hey,
finding
I'm in love
yourself
with myself
attractive.
and I'm the only person I care about. She would never say that to someone. So she would feel that shame, and she would feel the need to change herself, and she would change maybe. But now because of the internet, whatever compulsion you feel, you could just go, Google it, discover that there are other people in that, quote, community, that there's even a fancy label for it. And now, rather than suppressing this and maybe getting over it, becoming a better person, now you've embraced it. And it begins to sort of eat you alive, and it's the only thing about you. It's your entire identity. So the same old story, the same song we've heard many times before. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with all your friends. So now we have another occasion where Sean, my producer, has enlisted me to endure psychological and emotional abuse for your amusement.
The tortures of the damned!
And this time we are descending into the caverns of TikTok again to explore the polyamorous community. I'm not a COVID germaphobe by any means, but this is one occasion where, a mask and especially gloves, rubber gloves, might be required. So apparently on TikTok, a whole bunch of people, are in open relationships, polyamorous relationships, and they've made videos advertising and explaining and defending their lifestyle. I find it so sad and pathetic that I don't think I can watch very many of them, but we'll watch maybe 2 or 3 of them just to get a little taste. And we'll start with an easy one. Let's look at this one. Just mind your business, right? Well, except that your husband's sexual activity is your business. If you didn't intend to share in that business with him, to, in effect, make it your business exclusively, like exclusively your business, then why did you marry him? In what sense is this even a marriage? For what reason is it a marriage? But then we go down a rabbit hole that people don't want to go down, of course, which is like, now we got to come up with a definition of marriage. What is it exactly? And once you start doing that, then you're drawing lines, and you might find that we're excluding certain types of relationships that you would prefer to include, and that's why we don't define it at all. And now,
yeah, I mean, why should we exclude certain types of relationships? Like, does marriage have to be this rigid sort of thing? Like, you can't do anything out of it. You can't break the mold. You can't just have different marriage types. You can't just have a marriage that isn't just one specific way. Like, who is the arbiter to say this is how marriage is, this is how it should be followed? It sounds more like just a religious marriage at that point.
Now we have to call this a marriage also. You know what this is like? It's like going into business as an accountant, and then your first client sends their tax documents over to you, and you go, whoa, wait a second. That's none of my business. Your financial information is private. Keep it to yourself.
Boundaries, Dwight, come on.
Well, yeah, it's private, but the accountant-client relationship is supposed to largely center around private information. That's the whole point. I might have lost the thread in that analogy a little bit. I don't know where I was going. I think I made a point there. I'm pretty sure. But let's keep watching.
So my husband casually dropped today that he met this chick on Bumble that's only in town for a week, so we all know what that means. So I sent him a text like, babe, live your best life. If this thing goes all night, you want to go back to her Airbnb, you want to stay so that you can hit it in the morning again. Live your best life, babe. I got it here at home. Why did I do it? Because I'm such a good polyamorous wife, first of all. But also because you put that karma in the bank, and then y'all girls gonna cash it out later. If you want to be good at polyamory, you have to show up for your partner the way that you want them to show up for you. And if I had somebody roll into town, you better believe I would want my husband to step it up.
So there we go. And that's really it, isn't it? That's the whole shebang, if you'll pardon the expression. Why do you have a polyamorous relationship? What's the point of a quote unquote open marriage, which is a contradiction in terms? It's an oxymoron, an open marriage. Marriages are closed by definition. That's the point of them. But why do it? Well, it's entirely self-serving. That's the point. This is mutually agreed upon adultery. One adulterous spouse tolerates the adultery of the other spouse so that she has a license to behave the same way. It's also emotional blackmail at the same time, or putting...
Well, if both partners agree to it, then it wouldn't be emotional blackmail. It would just be how they operate. And that would just be their type of marriage, even though it doesn't go with your traditional sense of marriage. It's how they want to live with their marriage. I think marriages are unique across people. I don't think that people just all follow this traditional marriage that Matt Walsh sees. I think that they're all unique in some way, and that is just their unique relationship with it.
Karma in the bank, as she puts it. Again, we see how the marital union has been flipped on its head, gutted, emptied, hollowed out, rendered pointless, because marriage is supposed to be a loving and sacrificial union between two people who pledge to serve one another until death. That's what marriage is. I don't know what other point it could have if it's not that. And letting your spouse sleep around so that you can also sleep around is not loving service. It's self-service.
Okay, so you can't serve someone just because you sleep with someone else? I mean, again, I think he's building up this sex as it's the most important thing out there, but I think you can still have sex with someone outside of your marriage or relationship or whatever and still be serving to the person in your actual relationship.
And there's a difference. In fact, the difference is that those two things are opposites. A few decades ago, private citizens used to be largely that.
Not watching your ad, Matt Walsh. Jesus Christ.
To the breach there, friends!
But we haven't heard yet from a polyamorous man. So we've heard from the women. Let's hear from a man. I use that term loosely, of course.
Hey, man, I think you should know that I saw your wife with another man. Did they have leftovers? What? Did they have a bag of food? Yes? Who was holding the bag? She was. Yeah.
I have to say I take great exception to the fact that this is a bearded man. To see a bearded man cuckolding himself like this is extremely discouraging to me. It brings shame on the whole community of beardsmen. Of course, the cuckold effect he affects this ironic, detached pose, unconcerned that his wife is being sexually satisfied by another man.
You get back here, you make love to my wife!
All he cares about is the leftovers. Get it? He's not a lame, jealous cuckold. He's a cool, sarcastic one. That makes it all better. So there are really two options here, I think. One, when we talk about this guy and trying to interpret and understand what's going on. One is that your wife is out with another man, and you're pretending not to be bothered by it, but really inside you're dying and you're eating yourself alive. You're drowning in resentment and jealousy, and you hate your life.
Can we talk about this not in front of everyone, Jesse?
But you're trying to convince the world, but really yourself, that you're totally fine with it. So that's possible. Or two, you've been so neutered, so thoroughly defanged and deballed that you actually don't feel anything anymore when your wife openly cheats on you.
Or that's just how they operate, and that's what they agreed upon when they got into their relationship.
With your husband. It's
Oh, no, he knows all.
You're a lucky dog.
I'm not sure which is worse. They're both pathetic beyond words. What I do know, though, is that I can't watch any more of these videos. So that's it.
Okay, well, I think that is the end of this podcast, or the reaction to all these Daily Wire videos. Again, this playlist will be linked down below. It was just created by me for this episode. So I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of me reacting to the Daily Wire videos, also some gameplay in the background. I decided to kind of experiment with that a little bit because I was obviously reacting to so many videos, and basically sitting here for like over an hour and 30 minutes reacting to videos would be quite hard, and it would basically make me pause a lot more, and kind of just wanted to experiment with it a little too, to see if it made the podcast any better, at least from a video standpoint. Because I think just seeing the videos and then me pausing them is like not super entertaining, but at least if there's gameplay in the background, something to look at, then maybe that would kind of just make it a little bit more entertaining, almost like a stream in a way. But yeah, I think that it was a good addition. I'll just have to wait and see if anyone responds down below to at least tell me if this is more preferred than traditional reactions that I do, like for Jubilee or something. But if this is the more preferred format, I definitely will continue this as well. But I think that's about it for the podcast, everyone. I really enjoyed episode 20. I think this was a really interesting episode, and I'm glad it was at least somewhat special. I made it to be a quite long episode of reactions, and I know this is kind of becoming a react podcast, but trust me, it won't just become that. I will have other things on this podcast, and I do have other things planned. I also linked my second YouTube channel. I renamed it to Playmore96. So I don't exactly know what I'm going to do on that channel yet, but I have some ideas at least. But yeah, I think that I will actually be using that channel in the future. Not yet exactly, but for now I have linked it just below my first channel. So if you go to my main channel, Playmore69, this channel, and just go to my channels or just go to the featured channel section, whatever, you should see it. But I should be putting out more content over there. But anyways, don't want to ramble on for too much longer. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, see ya.